Hello and welcome to a new series of dubstep production videos in Logic Pro. You can apply this to other programs as well, like if you're using Fruity Loops or Cubase, Pro Tools, whatever you use. Some of these techniques you will find familiar ground with other DAWs. DAW meaning Digital Audio Workstation. My old YouTube account was deleted along with the videos because I deleted my Google account, which somehow took away my YouTube account. I think that's a bit backwards, but anyway. And the original videos were lost because my old hard drive corrupted and failed. So I decided to do a new series of videos again, and yeah, let's take it from the top. So let me play a bit of this track first so I can get sort of grips of the sound of this track, and I'll explain a little bit further. So here we go. Okay, so you get the basic gist of the track. It's pretty sort of, I don't know, sort of fruity, epic sounding when it drops with those like weird synth horns. But yeah, I mean, I made this track entirely with just Logic plugins. I actually made it for a website which is really good for beginners called beatelite.com, which sells sort of whole projects. And you can see I've even done like little notes here on the side here explaining this project. This is no way a sales marketing ploy, but you can buy this from the website if you want to and delve into it. You know, it's up to you. But I mean, the reason why I'm doing this one for my YouTube production tutorial is because it just uses the Logic plugins, and whoever owns Logic has these plugins. So, you know, it's simplest to me, so you can sort of follow along and not worry if you haven't or have got a certain plugin that I may or not have. But yeah, let's take it from the top. Let's start with a kick. If I loop this bit here, and then just solo the kick. Okay. So first things first, I'm going to take this down to its raw essentials. This is coming out of an EXS24. It's got multiple outputs on it, which means that you can see these three tracks here, these three different colours. They're all coming out of the same one instance of the EXS24. This is really useful if you just want to sequence all your drums on one MIDI channel but want to have separate sort of audio channels for your audio. That's, you know, what you'd use it for. I mean, I've gone a step further and I've actually used separate MIDI channels as well, but it just means that you only use one EXS24 instead of multiple ones. And in this, it's got a series of different kicks, different snares. You can't hear them because I've soloed just the kicks. And yeah, I mean, the EXS24 is really good because it's got its own sort of inbuilt synthesis engine with sort of filters, LFOs. This modulation matrix here is just amazing. You can do so much with it. You know, although it's got some simple controls of, like, you know, tune, random, fine, all that palaver. But anyway, right, let's start with a kick. This is without EQ, And just to demonstrate what, simple little touches of EQ can sort of make this kick the sounds a little bit flabby. Now with that on, it's just taken away some of the sub bass, sort of tightened it up a little bit, then boosted a tiny bit, about 100 Hz. I've also added some high end. If I take that off and on again, just makes it a little bit more audible. It will cut through the mix a little bit better. You've got to be careful with that though, because if you do it too much, your kick will end up just being like a knock and not a thud, if that makes sense. And on top of that, I've added some compression, and this is just to tighten it up again. It was still a little bit, I like using words like flabby and floppy. They kind of sort of describe how the audio is, even though it's not really scientific, but okay. And here we go. You can hear the compression coming in there. And it's just tightening up the end of it, because I've added quite a bit of attack, so you still get the transient of the kick sort of punching through, clicking through, and the release is quite low as well. So it's just compressing just after the initial kick. And I'll do it with off and on. I mean, it's very subtle, but it's all about these little subtleties that make up a whole, and I'll explain more about that a little bit later. This incidentally has a send going to bus 10, and that's my kick / snare sidechain channel. So that's like the channel I would use to trigger a sidechain on synths. It's got no output, it's just there so that the sidechain inputs of other things can pick it up. Let's move on to the snare. Okay, so the snare, let me just take all this off a second. Back to its basics. In fact, take all that off. Okay, so I've got a snare and a clap here, and they've both been output sort of routed to a bus, sort of a snare clap bus, and it's got some other processing on that, but I'll just wing back to the original and just the snare for now. So again, this is what it originally sounds like. Not great, but definitely workable. I think this is a combination of about, let me have a look. Yeah, so it's like 4 snares layered. That one, that one, that one, that one. I particularly like sort of disco snares because they're quite boomy. For example, like these two. Maybe not that one, that's a little bit harsh, but definitely those two. If you sort of mean the sort of tonality difference, that one. It's quite low, quite sort of ringy. I quite like that. Right, okay, so we've got the snare going on. Then with EQ, you hear that difference straight away, completely change. I don't do too much additive EQ. I mainly work subtracting because I like to find the best source material to start with before I start trying to compensate by boosting frequencies. But in this case, what I did was right, so it was fine. So I've just taken off some of the sub bass there, boosted again at about between 100 and 200 Hz, because that's where the audio sort of was peaking anyway. I just wanted to enhance that, and added a little bit of sort of sharpness between 1 and 2K, and some very bright top end, just to, again, like the kick, make it sort of clearer, cut through the mix a bit more. And on top of that, I've added a bit of compression, or quite a lot of compression actually, and you can hear how much difference that's made to it. Loads of attack again to let the first sort of pop come through. The release is a little bit higher on this one, and you see on the compressor, the Logic compressor by default starts on the platinum mode. That's great for things like vocals, it's quite smooth, but these modes here are sort of modelled on hardware compressors in different ways. The opto mode's normally quite sort of fast and quite hard, like quite aggressive. And I'm on class AU, I'm not actually sure what that's emulating, but it sounded right, so you've got to make sure that you play around with the circuitry type, because they all react a bit differently to the audio.